Elena stood alone in the empty kitchen of her childhood home, the foreclosure notice clutched tightly in her shaking hand. The walls, once alive with laughter, now echoed with silence. Her husband was gone, her savings were running on fumes, and her dreams felt shattered. But as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the cracked window, Elena made a decision. With nothing left to lose, she would fight, not just for herself, but for the life she still believed she could build. The kitchen was a ghost of what it used to be. The faded wallpaper peeled at the edges, and the countertops, once cluttered with family meals, were bare. The fridge hummed weakly, its shelves nearly empty. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, the overgrown lawn a testament to months of neglect. The air was thick with loss, but Elena's eyes burned with a flicker of defiance. This house, this life, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Beyond the window, the city buzzed with life, indifferent to Elena's struggles. But somewhere out there, she knew, was a chance to start over. The faint glow of streetlights lit the path she would take. A path full of uncertainty, but also possibility. This kitchen used to be my heart. Now it's a reminder of everything I've lost. But I refuse to let it be the end of my story. Hey folks, we're keeping this story rolling and want to hear where you're watching from. Loving it? Hit subscribe. There's another awesome story coming your way tomorrow. Elena Martinez, a 42-year-old woman with dark circles under her eyes and rough hands, stood at the kitchen table. Her once neat braid was now messy, and her clothes, a faded sweater and worn jeans, hung loosely on her frame. She was a woman who had lost everything: her husband, her home, her confidence. But beneath the exhaustion, there was a spark, a resilience that refused to die. Across town, her ex-husband Daniel lived comfortably in a new apartment, his life seemingly untouched by the wreckage he'd left behind. But the real enemy wasn't Daniel. It was the voice in Elena's head, whispering that she was too old, too broken, to start over. And then there was Margaret, a former co-worker who always had a knack for shooting down Elena's dreams as pipe dreams. Elena overhears a neighbor gossiping about her. She's 42, divorced, and broke. What's she going to do now? The societal judgment stings, but Elena clenches her fists, determined to prove them wrong. The next morning, Elena woke with a plan. She couldn't change the past, but she could shape her future. Her first step was to find a job, something to give her stability and purpose. She spent hours updating her resume, highlighting her years as a nurse before she'd left the workforce to raise her kids. But as she hit submit on application after application, doubt crept in. Who would hire a woman her age with a decade-long gap in her resume? Weeks dragged on, and the rejection emails kept flooding in. Each one was a punch to her fragile confidence. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. You're overqualified. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. The words blurred together, but the message was clear. The world had moved on without her. Elena sits cross-legged on her living room floor, eyes closed, focusing on her breath. Her hands tremble, but she repeats a mantra. This moment is all I have. I am enough. Buddhist mindfulness helps her ground herself, calming her nerves before facing another rejection. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Elena spotted a flyer for a local community center offering free career workshops for women. The center promised to help women re-enter the workforce, offering mentorship and resources. It was a long shot, but Elena had nothing to lose. She attended the next meeting, her heart pounding as she introduced herself to a room full of strangers. The group's leader, Maria, was a retired nurse with a warm smile and a no-nonsense attitude. She saw something in Elena, a spark of potential buried beneath layers of doubt. But not everyone was as welcoming. Margaret, who had joined the group as a volunteer mentor, eyed Elena with skepticism. "Nursing isn't what it used to be," Margaret said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're way behind the times. You'll never catch up." Elena's cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. "I'm not afraid of hard work," she replied, her voice steady. "I've already lost everything once. I'm not going to let fear stop me now." Maria pulls Elena aside after the meeting. "You know, in Buddhism, they say everything is impermanent," Maria says. "Your struggles, your setbacks, they're not forever. Accepting that can free you? Elena nods, reflecting on how clinging to her past has held her back. She decides to focus on the present. Elena threw herself into the workshops, attending every session and soaking up every piece of advice. She studied late into the night, learning about new medical technologies and brushing up on skills she hadn't used in years. But success didn't come easily. For every small win, there were two setbacks. Doubt crept in, and Elena found herself on the verge of giving up. Her savings were running on fumes and the bills were piling up. Her landlord left voicemail after voicemail, demanding overdue rent. Her fridge was nearly empty, and the thought of asking her family for help filled her with shame. But she refused to give up. She took on odd jobs, cleaning houses, delivering groceries, anything to make ends meet. Each night, she collapsed into bed, exhausted but determined. Margaret's skepticism didn't help. At every meeting, she found a way to undermine Elena's efforts. "You're wasting your time," Margaret said one evening, her voice sharp. "Nursing is for the young, the ambitious. You're past your prime." The words stung, but Elena refused to let them define her. Elena makes a mistake during a workshop, forgetting a medical term. Margaret smirks, but Maria steps in. "We all make mistakes, Elena. Be kind to yourself." Later alone, Elena repeats, "I forgive myself. I'm learning." Buddhist self-compassion helps her move forward. Margaret's negativity catches up with her. She's passed over for a promotion at work, and her bitterness isolates her. Meanwhile, Elena's hard work begins to pay off, illustrating the Buddhist concept of karma. One evening, as Elena sat at her desk, staring at yet another rejection email, her phone buzzed. It was Maria. "Elena, I have a lead for you, a big one, but it's risky and you'll need to prove yourself." The opportunity was a nursing position at a local hospital, one that had rejected dozens of applicants. They were looking for someone with experience, compassion, and a willingness to learn. Maria believed Elena had what it took, but Elena wasn't so sure. The hospital's director, Dr. Patel, was known for his high standards and his zero tolerance for mistakes. Elena spent weeks preparing for the interview, studying medical journals, practicing answers to potential questions, and reminding herself why she was doing this. The day of the interview arrived, and Elena stood before Dr. Patel, her hands trembling. As she began, her voice wavered, but she pushed through, channeling her passion and resilience. Halfway through, Dr. Patel interrupted. "Ms. Martinez, your resume shows a significant gap. 10 years out of the workforce is a long time. What makes you think you're qualified?" Elena froze. The room seemed to close in on her. But then, something inside her snapped. She straightened her shoulders and met Dr. Patel's gaze. "That gap? That's where I learned the real stuff. How to care for people, how to roll with the punches, and how to stand up for what I believe in. I may not have recent experience, but I've got something more valuable: resilience. And that's what makes me qualified." The room fell silent. Dr. Patel leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "That's exactly the kind of resilience we need." Elena got the job, but the challenges didn't end there. Her first weeks at the hospital were brutal. She worked long hours, learning new systems, and proving herself to colleagues who doubted her abilities. Margaret, who had somehow learned of Elena's new job, couldn't resist a final jab. "You'll burn out," she said at a community center meeting. "You're not cut out for this." But Elena was determined to prove her wrong. She poured her heart into her work, earning the respect of her patients and colleagues. One evening, during a particularly hectic shift, a patient coded in the ICU. The room was chaos, but Elena remained calm, her hands steady as she assisted the doctor. The patient stabilized, and the doctor turned to Elena, nodding in approval. "Good work, Martinez. You're a natural." The community center hosts a celebration for Elena's new job. Maria toasts, "This is what community is about, lifting each other up." The scene emphasizes the religious value of interconnectedness, resonating with viewers who value community. Word of Elena's skills spread quickly. Dr. Patel began assigning her to more challenging cases, and her colleagues started seeking her advice. But the true turning point came during a hospital-wide meeting. Dr. Patel stood before the staff, his voice booming. "I want to recognize someone who has exceeded our expectations. Elena Martinez came to us with a big old gap in her resume, but she's shown us that experience isn't everything. Resilience, compassion, and determination. These are the qualities that make a great nurse. Elena, stand up. The room erupted in applause and Elena rose, her cheeks flushed with pride. Margaret, who had been invited to the meeting as a guest, sat in the back, her face pale. For the first time, she had no words. Elena's career took off. Within a year, she was promoted to charge nurse, leading a team of younger nurses and mentoring new hires. Her patients adored her, and her colleagues respected her. But more importantly, she had reclaimed her sense of self-worth. The woman who had once stood alone in an empty kitchen was now a force to be reckoned with. Margaret approaches Elena at a community center meeting, her tone softer. "I was wrong about you, Elena. You've proven that resilience is the greatest strength of all." Elena smiles, not out of pride, but out of gratitude. "I forgive you, Margaret," she says. "We all have our struggles." The Christian concept of forgiveness adds emotional depth, appealing to viewers who value empathy. Elena sits in her now brighter kitchen, reflecting on her journey. Resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about growing, learning, and helping others. I found hope in the darkest moments, and you can too. The monologue ties in the moral lesson, encouraging viewers to reflect on their own lives. Elena's story is a testament to the power of resilience. Life's greatest challenges don't define us. What defines us is how we choose to respond. Through mindfulness, compassion, and community, we can rise again, rebuild, and create something even greater than before. If Elena's story hit home for you, remember that your comeback story is still in the making. Hit that subscribe button for more stories of grit, heart, and victory, and drop your own journey in the comments below. Together, we can lift each other up from the ashes.